Imagine being abandoned by the one you dedicated your entire life to. A son whom you loved and cared for chooses wealth over his own mother. And just when you think nothing could get worse, an even deeper betrayal reveals itself, capable of destroying everything. What would you do if you had to face the pain of ingratitude and coldness from those who should be your family? Get ready, because this story will challenge everything you think about love, loyalty, and revenge. If you're curious to know what happens next, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because you won't want to miss a second of this story. Now let's begin. Enjoy the streets, mother. That was exactly what the tycoon Gustavo told his mother before throwing her out of the house on her birthday. However, a few days later, he was terrified to discover something that would change everything. The sun was slowly rising over the rooftops of the town of Vale das Flores, its golden rays caressing the facades of the houses and awakening the residents to a new day. But in the imposing Castro family residence, located on top of a hill that dominated the landscape, the first light brought with it a special promise. It was the 75th birthday of Sofia Castro, the matriarch. She woke up with a smile on her face, her clear eyes sparkling with anticipation. Despite her age, she moved with a grace and vigor that belied the years. Her silver hair, meticulously arranged, showed signs of age, but radiated an undeniable warmth. Carefully, she put on her most elegant outfit, a set in soft shades of blue that highlighted her eyes. She lightly applied lipstick, something she rarely did, but today was a unique day. She looked at herself in the mirror, letting her mind travel back to the past, to the many birthdays celebrated in that same home, surrounded by everyone's love. "This is going to be a wonderful day," she whispered, adjusting the pearl necklace she had inherited from her late husband. "I bet Gustavo has something special planned." Gustavo, her only heir, was Sofia's pride and joy. At 45, he had become one of the region's leading businessmen. His company, Castro Investimentos, was a prominent player in the construction industry, building projects all over the country. Sofia couldn't contain herself when she thought about her son, feeling a mixture of pride for his achievements and nostalgia for the days when he was just a little boy, running around the halls and getting into mischief. Treading lightly, she descended the stairs to the main dining room. This place was synonymous with luxury, with high ceilings, glittering chandeliers, and classic furniture that held every corner of the room with memories of a lifetime. Here, Sofia had spent her joys as a young wife, then as a mother, and now as a grandmother. When she arrived, she stopped. The oak table, which would normally be covered with the fine white tablecloth and china reserved for special occasions, was bare. No flowers, no cards, no sign of a memorable day. Perhaps they were planning a surprise, she thought, clinging to hope. She headed for the kitchen, expecting to find a staff busy with preparations, but the place was empty, only the low hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. Sofia's heart sank, but she didn't allow herself to lose faith. "Maybe Gustavo would like to take me out to lunch," she said, heading toward his office. She found the door slightly open and recognized voices. Gustavo was talking to his wife, Rafaela. Sofia froze, about to knock, when she heard her name. "I can't believe your mother thinks we're going to cancel everything because of her birthday." Rafaela's voice sounded cold. "There's a lunch with funders, Gustavo, and it's crucial for the new project." "I know," Gustavo replied, tired. "But today she turns 75. Maybe we could we what?" Rafaela interrupted. "Risk millions for a cake and some candles? Your mother is no longer a child, Gustavo. She needs to understand that the world does not revolve around her." That was a blow to Sofia. Rafaela's words, cold as razors, were only hurt more than her son's silence. Adjusting herself, she knocked softly and entered, finding Gustavo and Rafaela as surprised as children caught in mischief. "Good morning," Sophia said, forcing a smile. "I was wondering if you had any plans for today." Gustavo looked away, pretending to tidy up papers on the table. Rafaela responded in a soft but false tone. "Sophia, my dear, good morning. Today we are very busy with an important business meeting which cannot be postponed." Sophia nodded, feeling a growing emptiness. "I see. I just thought, after all, today is my birthday." Finally, Gustavo looked up and stared at his mother. Sophia thought she saw a flash of discomfort and even sadness in his eyes, but that flash soon disappeared, replaced by indifference. "Mom," he began, his voice low, "you know how important this lunch is. We can't cancel it. I'm sure you understand." She fought back tears. She wouldn't allow herself to cry in front of them. "Of course. I don't want to disrupt your business, my son." Rafaela, noticing the tension, forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe we can do something small tonight. A cake, maybe?" Before Gustavo could respond, the phone rang. He answered quickly, assuming a corporate demeanor. "Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. Hanging up, he stood up suddenly and grabbed his briefcase. "I'm sorry, Mom, but something urgent came up at the office." Sophia stood still, watching her son get ready to leave. Every gesture revealed how little she meant in his life. The boy who used to run into her arms now didn't even look her in the eye. Then something snapped inside her. Decades of unconditional love, silent sacrifices, accepting crumbs of attention, all accumulated, resulting in a sudden explosion. "Don't worry, Gustavo," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "I don't need your pity or an improvised cake." He turned around immediately, surprised by his mother's tone. Rafaela, in turn, displayed a discreet smile of triumph. "Mom, don't be like that," Gustavo began. "What is it like, Gustavo?" she said. "An inconvenience in your perfect routine? I spent a good part of my life trying not to weigh in, watching you change, allowing success to transform you. But enough is enough." Gustavo looked genuinely stunned. "Mom, you're overreacting. You know I love you, but I have responsibilities. There's a whole company to run." "And what am I?" Sophia's fragile figure suddenly became imposing. "An old piece of furniture that you inherited and don't know where to put it? Maybe it's time for me to leave so that I can stop being a burden to you and your impeccable wife." Rafaela, who was watching the clash with a mixture of boredom and irritation, decided to intervene. "Sophia, you're being melodramatic. No one said it's a burden, but that only inflamed Sophia even more." "You said it, Rafaela. Don't treat me with hypocrisy. I know your looks, your whispers. I know everything." Rafaela's mask of cordiality slipped, revealing her contempt. "So what? This is my home, my life. You are nothing more than a persistent memory of a past that Gustavo has overcome." Gustavo, trapped between his mother and his wife, seemed helpless, looking from one to the other like someone watching a violent game of tennis. "Enough!" he finally yelled, running his hand through his hair, an old gesture of tension. "Both of you, that's enough. Mom, don't go away. This is your home too." But something in his tone, perhaps a doubt or even relief at the idea of her leaving, made Sophia break off completely. "No, Gustavo," she replied, sadness overflowing. "This stopped being my home a long time ago, and I'm leaving today." "Don't be ridiculous," Rafaela intervened coldly. "Where would you go? You have nothing out there." Those words, although cruel, had some truth to them. Sophia had dedicated everything to her family. Outside those walls, the world was huge and uncertain. But at that moment, any place seemed preferable to where she wasn't loved. "That's none of your business," Sophia replied, heading for the door. "I'll be gone before you return from your precious lunch." It was then that Gustavo, perhaps pressured by the situation or pushed by a trace of guilt, made the fatal mistake. "Wait, Mom," he shouted, gripping her arm tightly. "You can't go out like that. What will people say? What about my reputation? They'll say that my old mother is wandering the streets." A piercing silence took over the room. Sophia looked at her son, searching for a trace of the boy he had been. All she found was a man dominated by vanity. "Let me go, Gustavo," she demanded, her voice barely audible. However, he, driven by rage, did not let her go, and in an act of cruelty that would torment him forever, he spat, "Enjoy the streets, mother. We don't want you here." Not today, not ever. For Sophia, it was like a slap. She staggered away. Rafaela beside her smiled victoriously. "Gustavo," Sophia began, but fell silent. What else was there to say? The boy she would give anything for was exposing his true feelings. Without another word, she turned and left the office, walking through the corridors full of happy memories that now seemed to mock her. She went up to her room, picked up a small suitcase, and still unable to believe it, began to pack her things in silence, tears streaming down her face. In the office, Gustavo woke up from what seemed like a nightmare. "What did I do?" he whispered, staring at his own hands as if he didn't recognize them. Rafaela, however, showed no remorse. "It was necessary," she replied, adjusting her pearl necklace. "It's about time we put that old woman in her place." Gustavo looked at her in horror, realizing how cold the woman was, her heart as hard as stone. But he couldn't say anything, and Rafaela urged him, "Come on, Gustavo, we're late for lunch. We can't keep our financiers waiting." As if hypnotized, Gustavo let himself be carried away. The car engine screamed, breaking the morning silence, taking the man who chose triumph over his mother's affection. Alone in her room, Sophia heard the sound of the car driving away. Each object she put in her suitcase carried a piece of her life story, photographs of Gustavo as a child, love letters from her deceased husband, so many accumulated treasures. Everything seemed to belong to a past that was dissolving. Finishing tidying up, she sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of what she was going to do. At 75, she was leaving the only home she had ever known. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but there was something stronger: her dignity. "I can't stay where I'm not loved," she murmured, wiping away her tears. She stood up, picked up her suitcase, and left the room without looking back. The house, once full of life, now seemed like a cold mausoleum. She walked silently to the front door. She paused briefly in front of the huge mirror in the hallway. The woman reflected there seemed more tired, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. "Happy birthday, Sophia," she said to herself with a sad smile. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the world. The morning sun greeted her, warming her like a hug. Sophia walked around the garden where roses she had planted herself were blooming. For a second, she thought about going back, hoping that Gustavo would change his mind. However, the memory of his words silenced any hope. With slow but determined steps, she followed the path that led to the street. With each step, she felt more like herself, recovering her former courage and identity. When she reached the asphalt, she reflected on her destiny. The town seemed familiar and strange at the same time. Who would welcome her? She then remembered Lorena, a lifelong friend who lived in a simple neighborhood. Without many options, she left, dragging her suitcase, facing curious looks and whispers. Some residents greeted her respectfully, others whispered, but she kept her head held high, fed up with the humiliation. After a long walk, he arrived at Lorena's door, his heart pounding. He rang the doorbell, and every second seemed like an eternity until the door opened. Lorena, the same age as Sophia, but with a youthful enthusiasm that time had not erased, welcomed her with a smile that turned into distress when she noticed her friend's condition. "Sophia, what happened? Why are you here with that suitcase?" The sight of her friend's welcoming face was the final barrier. Sophia burst into tears. "Oh, Lorena, something terrible happened." Without saying anything, Lorena wrapped her in a hug. The door closed, leaving outside the world that had been so cruel on that day that should have been happy. Inside the simple but cozy room, Sophia sat, shaking from crying. Lorena stood by her side, holding her hands, patiently waiting for her to catch her breath. "Speak slowly," Lorena encouraged. "You're safe." What happened? Little by little, between sighs, Sophia told everything. Gustavo's indifference, Rafaela's bitter words, the painful breakup. Lorena listened to everything without interrupting, her face reflecting shock, sadness, and indignation. When Sophia finished, her friend hugged her intensely. "Sophia, I can't believe Gustavo did this. He's not the boy we know." "I don't recognize him anymore," Sophia murmured. "Capital and power have changed him completely." Lorena suddenly stood up with a resolute air. "Don't worry. You'll stay here with me for as long as you need. I won't let you spend this day alone." Sophia tried to refuse, fearing she would be a nuisance, but Lorena silenced her with a simple look. "Don't even think about it. You're my best friend. You belong here." For the first time since leaving the Castro residence, Sophia felt a small ray of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Lorena disappeared into the kitchen for a moment, returning with a tray containing 2 cups of steaming tea and a small cake with a candle. "It's not much," said Lorena, a little embarrassed. "But I couldn't let your birthday go by without celebrating." Sophia looked at the cake, then at her friend. A wave of gratitude flooded her, and the tears returned, but now they were tears of emotion. "Lorena, I have no words. Don't say anything. Just blow out the candle and make a wish." Sophia closed her eyes, remembering everything that had happened in those last hours. When she opened them, there was a renewed determination. She blew out the candle with conviction, as if banishing the misfortunes. "What did you order?" asked Lorena. "Strength to start over," Sophia replied, smiling. "Strength to prove to Gustavo and to everyone that I can still do a lot." Lorena agreed enthusiastically. "And you will, my dear. You will succeed." As they shared the cake, Sophia felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. She had indeed lost a lot, but she had gained something essential, the freedom to live without ties. What Sophia didn't imagine was that her wish was about to trigger frightening events, full of secrets and betrayals, and that fate would bring more twists and turns. Meanwhile, in the luxurious restaurant, Gustavo tried to concentrate on the meeting with the financiers, but he could barely hear their voices. His mind flew to the scene at the residence, remembering Sophia's hurt eyes. Rafaela, noticing his distraction, nudged him lightly. "Focus, love. We're about to close the deal of the century." He forced himself to pay attention, but an inner voice kept telling him that he had perhaps made the biggest mistake of his life. What no one there knew was that this meeting would be the beginning of a series of revealing events. Secrets, buried for years, would come to light, and family ties would be put to the test. As the sun set on the horizon, ending a day that had begun with anticipation but ended in disappointment, the wheels of fate were already turning. Sophia, Gustavo, Rafaela, and everyone involved were about to embark on a path that would change their lives. The stage was set, each actor in his place, with the curtain about to rise on the first act of a drama that would keep everyone in suspense until the end. The days after Sophia left were hectic. A tense silence hung over the Castro household. Gustavo, tormented by guilt, threw himself into his work like a madman, busying himself with meetings to delay his return to a now empty home as much as possible. Rafaela, on the other hand, seemed to shine in Sophia's absence, throwing flashy parties, redesigning entire rooms, parading around the city as if she owned everything. However, behind this perfect facade, the cracks only grew. One morning, about a week after her disastrous birthday, Lorena received an unexpected visit from Mateus, her brother and former private detective, famous for being persevering and methodical. "Matthew," she exclaimed, surprised but happy. "What brings you here?" He, middle-aged, had piercing eyes as if he could see through lies. "I need to see my favorite sister, can't I?" Lorena laughed, but her joy diminished when she noticed his seriousness. "You heard about Sophia, didn't you?" Matthias said gravely. "News travels in a small place. How is she?" Before Lorena could answer, Sophia appeared. Despite all the problems, she now had a determined glow in her eyes. "I'm better than I expected, Matthias. Lorena has been such a great friend." He analyzed Sophia, his detective instinct attentive to every detail. "Good to know, but I didn't just come to visit." Lorena and Sophia exchanged worried glances. He led them to the kitchen table and spoke softly and firmly. "I've been watching Rafaela. Don't get me wrong, it's not professional espionage, but something hasn't been right since what happened on the birthday." Sophia leaned in, interested. "Explain that." Matthias took a notebook out of his pocket full of notes. "In the last few days, she has been visiting a small office downtown. It is not the headquarters of Castro Investimentos, but a discreet building." Lorena grimaced. "It could be anything." "Yes. But what caught my attention was another person frequenting the same place, Nelson Ferreira." Sophia gasped, putting her hand over her mouth. "Gustavo's best friend?" "Himself," confirmed Matthias. "From observations, he arrives and leaves at the same times as Rafaela." The atmosphere was heavy. Sophia walked to the window, her mind boiling. "It's not possible. Gustavo has trusted Nelson blindly since college." Lorena touched Sophia's shoulder, trying to comfort her. "Let's take it easy. There may be explanations for this." Matthew remained serious. "We have no evidence of anything illegal, but my instincts tell me there's more to the story." Sophia turned to him, looking at him with deep pain and determination. "If Rafaela is plotting something and deceiving Gustavo, we need to know." Matthew nodded, a spark of excitement in his eyes, remembering his days of investigation. "I can keep researching, but I need support. This could be big." Lorena gave him a worried look. "Are you sure, Matthias? What if Rafaela finds out you've been eyeing her?" He smiled. "Don't worry, little sister. I know how to deal with these kinds of people. Besides, I owe Sophia a lot. It's the least I can do." Sophia smiled, moved. "I don't even know how to thank you. You are the only family I have left." "We'll do whatever it takes," concluded Lorena, hugging Sophia. Meanwhile, at the Castro Investimentos office, Gustavo was heading a pile of papers, reports, contracts. Everything formed a blur of digits and letters. No matter how hard he tried to focus, all he could remember was what had happened on Sophia's birthday. A knock on the door interrupted him. "Come in." Nelson appeared, bringing his confident smile. "Gustavo, my friend, still buried in the job?" He rubbed his tired eyes. "There's a lot to do, Nelson. This new project is vital." Nelson sat down, studying Gustavo shrewdly. "You look terrible? Trouble in paradise?" For a moment, Gustavo considered opening up, telling her about the fight with his mother, the guilt, the uncertainties about Rafaela. But an internal voice held him back. "It's nothing I can't handle," he lied. "What brings you here?" Nelson leaned back, adopting a relaxed air that contrasted with Gustavo's tension. "I came to check if everything is okay. I heard rumors. You know how gossipy this town is. They say your mother left the imposing residence after an argument." Gustavo felt the blood drain from his face. "How did you find out so quickly?" Nelson sighed, feigning compassion. "It's complicated, isn't it? If you need help, we've been friends for decades. You can trust me." Gustavo almost gave in, but he caught a strange glint in Nelson's eyes, something that bothered him. "I appreciate it, but I can solve it, really." Nelson shrugged, standing up. "Remember, I'm available." He smoothed his impeccable jacket. "By the way, have you seen the quarterly financial reports? There are discrepancies that require your attention." "What kind of discrepancies?" Gustavo frowned. "Probably an accounting error. I'll send it to you by email." With that excuse, he left, leaving Gustavo puzzled and insecure, not knowing why he felt even more worried after that conversation. On the other side of the town, Rafaela entered a discreet building. She checked that she wasn't being followed and entered through a side door. A man was waiting in a modest, windowless office. "You're late," he grumbled, his voice icy. Rafaela removed her sunglasses, revealing an annoyed look. "I needed to make sure they weren't following me. Things are complicated, Rafael." The slender, dark-eyed Rafael stood up. "What do you mean by complicated?" Rafaela collapsed into a chair, giving up her pose as the perfect lady. "The old lady is gone. There was a scandal and now she's with a friend in the central area." Rafael muttered curses. "This could ruin our plan. Does Gustavo suspect?" "I doubt it. He's naive. He only cares about the company. He has no idea what's going on under his nose." Rafael paced back and forth, tense. "We need to speed up. The plan was to wait, but without Sophia in the house, we have an opportunity." "What do you suggest?" Rafaela asked, half fascinated, half fearful. He paused, smiling coldly. "Time to put the decisive step into action. Brace yourself, my dear. Things are about to get very interesting." While Rafaela and Rafael conspired in secret, Gustavo, increasingly haunted by guilt, began to investigate, unaware that he was about to unearth a destructive plot. The following days passed in a frenzy. Mateus, resuming his investigative profile, formed a network of contacts and sources. Lorena, using her reputation as a teacher, heard rumors in the community. Sophia, torn between her hurt at her son's betrayal and her desire to protect him, tried to remain calm. At nightfall each night, she would stand at the window, looking at the distant silhouette of the imposing residence, wondering if Gustavo was okay or if he suspected danger. One late afternoon, while Sophia and Lorena were preparing dinner, Mateus burst into the house, bringing a look of triumph and apprehension. "I found something," he announced, dropping a brown envelope on the table. The two approached. "What is this?" Sophia asked, her heart racing. Mateus opened the envelope, scattering photos and documents. "I followed the trail of capital, and there is something very strange at Castro Investimentos." The women analyzed the material, copies of reports, encrypted emails. "I don't understand," said Lorena. "What do they show?" Matthew pointed to a row of numbers. "These are the reported values of a project, but these others are the real ones." Sophia was horrified. "There's a difference of millions." He nodded seriously. "Someone is embezzling funds and has been doing so for months, maybe years." Sophia sank into a chair, pale. "My God, how much did they divert?" "It's hard to know for sure, but it seems to be in the tens of millions in recent times." A silence fell over the kitchen until Sophia said, "We need to warn Gustavo." Lorena looked at her, distressed. "Are you sure? After what he did to you?" Sophia stood up, determined. "He is still my heir, and I can't watch his life fall apart without doing anything." Mateus nodded in approval. "I agree, but be careful. If Rafaela and Nelson are behind us, they are dangerous. We don't know how far they can go." "So, what do we do?" Lorena insisted. Mateus, gathering the documents, mentally drew up a plan. "We need irrefutable proof, something that cannot be denied, and we need to find a way to speak to Gustavo without alerting Rafaela or Nelson." Sophia, looking in the direction where the resident stood, felt a mixture of maternal affection and ferocity. "I will do whatever it takes to protect my son." With the sunset dyeing the sky red, that trio, gathered in the simple kitchen, had no idea of the repercussions their actions would have on the entire city. The truth was coming, and no one was prepared to face its consequences. In the imposing residence, unaware of the coming storm, Rafaela was beautifying herself for yet another social event, giving empty smiles. As she put on her lipstick, she received a message on her cell phone. Everything is ready for the decisive phase. Wait for my signal. R. A cold smile formed on his lips. Soon, very soon. And so, with secrets hidden beneath the surface and loyalties hanging by a thread, the stage was set for the next act of this drama. The truth, as always, would come out, but the price might be too high for many. These were hectic days for Sofia, Lorena, and Mateus. Each one moved cautiously so as not to arouse suspicion. Mateus spent hours analyzing transactions and money trails. Lorena investigated rumors. Sofia dealt with the pain of having been expelled and the fear that Gustavo would not listen to anything. One afternoon, Mateus was looking through papers when he exclaimed, euphoric, "I found it! I always knew there was something suspicious about these transfers." Sofia and Lorena ran to him, anxious. "What's wrong?" Matthew showed a report full of numbers. "Look at these transactions, supposedly made to suppliers. In reality, the money goes to an account in the Cayman Islands." "But what does that mean?" asked Lorena. Mateus spoke in a serious tone. "Someone steals millions from Gustavo's company and does it in a sophisticated way." Sofia turned pale. "How can you do this without him noticing?" "They know how to camouflage well. And what's more, they plan a final blow." Lorena's eyes widened. "Final blow?" Mateus held up some printed emails with fake headers. "They're planning a huge transfer next week. If it happens, Castro Investimentos will go bankrupt." Sofia looked at the documents. "We need to warn him." "But how?" asked Matthew. Lorena raised her hand, asking for silence. "I have a friend in the police. We can ask for help, but it needs to be quick." Sofia took a deep breath, her heart racing. "Then let's put an end to this once and for all." So, Mateus and Lorena agreed. Meanwhile, Gustavo, that same night, isolated himself in the office, re-examining the paperwork. He saw discrepancies, strange transfers. The shock was enormous. "Rafaela," he murmured in disbelief. "Why would I do that?" Without hesitation, he picked up his cell phone and called her, but it only went to voicemail. His discomfort only grew. He needed answers. So he decided to dial another number. Nelson's. The friend answered in his relaxed manner. Gustavo was direct, explaining that he had encountered serious problems. "Ah, Gustavo, calm down. We'll sort it out. I'll be there tomorrow morning," replied Nelson after a brief silence. Something in his tone didn't convince Gustavo, but he accepted. "Yes, okay, we'll talk tomorrow." When he hung up, Gustavo looked back at the window. Loneliness invaded him. Where was Sofia right now when he needed her most? And he remembered that he was the one who had thrown her out. The phone vibrated, revealing a message from an anonymous number. "Meet me at the park tomorrow morning. Come alone. I need to show you something about Rafaela." Frowning, Gustavo put his cell phone away. He sensed that this was the key to unlocking the truth, and if that was the case, he would go all the way. The time had come to face the consequences. The next morning, the sun rose in a clear sky, as if promising to expose long-buried secrets. Gustavo appeared in the park, his heart racing. A cold breeze stirred the treetops. He soon noticed a hooded figure near the lake. He approached, feeling his spine shiver, until the person lifted the hood, revealing his face. It was Mateus. "Matthew, where is my mother?" "Calm down, Gustavo. She's fine, but you need to see this first." Mateus handed him a folder full of documents and detailed everything he and Lorena had discovered about Rafaela and Nelson. Gustavo examined it, turning pale with each page, understanding the magnitude of the betrayal. "No, it can't be. Rafaela? Why?" he stammered. "Perhaps pure greed," Matthew ventured. "The fact is that the final blow will occur tomorrow, and you need to act." A mixture of indignation and resentment consumed Gustavo. Rafaela, the woman he had shared his life with, now appeared as a stranger. However, what tore him apart most deeply was having mistreated the only person who had ever given him unconditional affection, Sophia. Even so, it was not time to lament. He needed to stop this scheme. "Thank you, Matthew, for bringing the truth. I will seek justice. Be careful. Rafaela and Nelson are dangerous." As he turned to leave, Gustavo stopped suddenly. "And my mother?" Mateus smiled slightly. "She's with Lorena, safe, and she wants to see you." Gustavo hesitated, his wounded pride still pulsing, but the need to redeem himself was stronger. "Give me the address. As soon as I resolve this, I'll go there." After writing it down, Gustavo left the park with a heavy heart, but determined to correct his mistake. Meanwhile, in the imposing residence, Rafaela collected jewelry, documents, and cash. Nelson waited in a rented car as they planned to escape that very night. "We have to hurry," she cursed. "Gustavo must have discovered something. If he doesn't know yet, he will soon." However, she was unaware that the trap against her was closing. At the police station, Lorena's friend was putting together a team to check the evidence. Everything was converging towards an inevitable outcome: the fall of a castle built on lies. Late in the afternoon, Gustavo arrived at the residence, his heart racing. He entered silently, catching Rafaela packing her suitcase in a hurry. "Where are you going, Rafaela?" She jumped, startled, then lifted her chin defiantly. "Maybe far away." Gustavo threw the evidence folder on the table. "You stole from me, from my company. You were about to destroy everything." Rafaela laughed sarcastically. "You destroyed yourself when you chose that old woman over me." But Gustavo was no longer the man blinded by illusions. Now he understood that the void was Rafaela. Before he could continue, sirens were heard outside. Police officers invaded the residence, guns drawn. Rafaela froze, overcome with terror. No, it can't be. But it was too late. The evidence was there. Mateus and Lorena arrived to testify. Gustavo looked at her. "Why, Rafaela? Why all this?" She looked down without answering. Soon, she was handcuffed. She was taken away, while Sophia entered through the door accompanied by the others. When he saw his mother, Gustavo felt his eyes fill with tears. "Mom, forgive me. I can't even express how sorry I am." Sophia approached him, hugging him tightly. At that moment, there was no need for words. In that embrace, they found the cure for wounds that seemed incurable. A thorough investigation followed, revealing huge scandals. But with Gustavo renewed and more humble, the company survived. Sophia returned to the house. Previously rejected, she was now welcomed with gratitude and affection. Lorena and Matthias continued to participate in this new stage of the family, united on the foundations of trust. When the sun rose again over the Valley of Flowers, it illuminated a different scene where affection and truth triumphed over ambition and deceit. In that home, which had been the scene of so much sorrow, true peace now reigned, solidified by bonds that not even the darkest trials could break.